Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Could you please introduce yourself to the jury?
My name is Jason Becker.
How old are you?
I am 36 years old.
Do you live in the area?
I do. I live in Canton.
Tell us a little bit about your education.
My education, high school and college UMass. And I went to EMT school a little over 10 years ago and paramedic school.
Tell me a little bit about EMT school. How old were you when you started EMT school?
When I started EMT school, roughly 21 years old.
Why did you decide to go to EMT school?
I wanted to save some lives.
Tell us a little bit about EMT school. What did it require?
EMT school is a couple months of classroom stuff, and then you do some ride time on the ambulance. Paramedic school is a little different. It's about a little extended. 2 years worth of training. You're doing hospital, ER time, and ambulance time also.
How long did you serve as an EMT before you went to paramedic school?
I worked as an EMT for approximately 5 years.
Can you estimate how many dozens or hundreds of calls you were on during that time?
Hundreds.
Why did you decide then to go get paramedic training?
Oh, I wanted to be on the fire department, and it was a prerequisite.
Did you complete paramedic school successfully?
I did.
Were you still working as an EMT at the time?
I was.
And inevitably, did you seek to have a different job? Did you try to be a firefighter?
I wanted to be a firefighter, correct.
Were you successful in doing that?
I was.
Tell us a little bit about that, sir.
On the Canton Fire Department. So I got on the Canton Fire Department, and they send you to the fire academy, where you train to be a firefighter.
So you had EMT training, paramedic training, and then firefighter training?
That's correct.
On the Canton Police Department, did you serve dual roles as a paramedic and as a firefighter?
Fire department?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Firefighter and as a paramedic.
You served as a firefighter and a paramedic?
Correct.
In the Canton Fire Department, does it have more than one station?
There is. There's two.
Is there one station that's larger or smaller than the other?
Station 1 is the headquarters, which is larger.
Had you ever spent time at Station 1 as a firefighter or a paramedic?
I have. We rotate through both stations.
I want you to take us back to January 29th, 2022. Were you working that evening?
I was.
What station were you assigned to?
Canton Station 2.
Canton Fire Station 2?
Correct.
And that's the smaller of the two stations?
It is.
Were you working with anybody at Fire Station 2 that night?
My ambulance partner at the time was firefighter Dan Whitley.
Was there anybody else who was working at Fire Station 2 in addition to you and Dan Whitley?
Correct. There was an engine company with 3 guys on it.
3 people were assigned to
The engine, correct.
Were you and Dan Whitley assigned as partners for the day, the week?
Correct. Yes, we were.
Which was it, the day or the week, sir?
The week.
So for the entire week, you're partners with a person, and does that rotate on other assignments?
It does. It rotates.
So on this particular week, you were assigned as partners with Dan Whitley?
I was.
What were your roles between the two of you?
Well, at the time, he was my preceptor. I was a new paramedic at the time. So I was more or less the lead tech on all the calls as part of my training. And Dan's been a paramedic for a long time, so he was there to teach me.
So would Dan Whitley be the lead on the call, and he would help you?
I would be the lead.
You would be the lead?
Correct.
Did you get a call that early morning hours of January 29, 2022?
We did.
What was the call assigned for?
It was a call for Section 12 psych eval.
Very briefly, can you tell us what a Section 12 is? Sure.
It's a transportation order filled out by police, doctor, basically for us on the ambulance that we have to take the patient, whether voluntarily or involuntarily, because they're a threat to themselves or someone else.
When you received the call for a Section 12, were you aware that there were other calls that Fire Station 1 had responded to that morning?
We were aware. You can hear the calls going out each station.
Were you or Dan Whitley any part of that earlier call that Fire Station 1 responded to before you got the call for the Section 12?
We were not.
So your efforts were after?
We were after, correct.
After you got the call to respond to a Section 12, did you head towards Fairview Road?
We did.
Tell us a little bit about the trip to Fairview Road.
It was a little extended because of the weather conditions at the time. Snowing heavily, windy, low visibility.
Okay. How long did it take to get from Fire Station 2 to Fairview Road?
Approximately 8 to 10 minutes.
Who drove?
Firefighter Whitley.
Now, on the way to Fairview Road, do you sit in the front of the ambulance?
We do.
Take us to when you arrived to Fairview Road. What do you see?
You see a bunch of police lights. Canton engine 3 was already on scene, so we parked behind them.
Did you have it, without talking about what you spoke about, did you have a chance to speak to anybody at the scene?
We briefly spoke to the Canton police, and they briefed us and sent us to where the defendant was at the time.
Why do you have a conversation with other first responders at the scene before you do anything?
They're making sure the scene is safe to begin with, and they're unseen first, so they have a little more info than what our dispatch would have.
After you had that debriefing with colleagues, were you directed to approach any certain person?
I was.
Where did you go?
I went to the defendant, who was sitting in a black SUV type car.
Were there other persons inside the car with the defendant?
From my understanding, there was one person in the driver's seat.
And what seat was the defendant in?
She was in the front passenger seat.
Did you have a chance to speak to her?
I did.
And the person you spoke to who was in the passenger seat of that car, do you see that person in court today?
I do.
Could you point out and describe an article of clothing, please?
Miss Reed right there, she's in the blue, navy blue.
How long was your conversation with the defendant while she was still seated inside the vehicle?
Approximately 5 to 8 minutes.
At some point, did you and the defendant move to another location?
We did.
Where did you go?
So we went back in the ambulance.
After having a conversation with her, was she cooperative going back to the ambulance with you?
She was.
And did you ask her to be seated in the ambulance?
I did.
Was she cooperative with that as well?
She was.
After she was seated in the ambulance, did you close the doors and get in?
We did.
When you say we, who was with you?
Me and firefighter Whitley.
So you and firefighter Whitley were in the back of the ambulance with Miss Reed. Who was going to drive the ambulance?
Firefighter Sam Park.
Where did he come from?
He was on the fire engine that was already on scene.
I want to ask you questions now about what you did in the back of the ambulance and some of the conversations that you had. Tell us what your role is once you have a patient in the back of the ambulance. What do you do next?
Each patient's different. Depends on what the call is for. In this specific situation, it was more a psych eval, because that's what we were called for. Initial triage questions: is the patient cooperative, uncooperative, combative? I asked her name, her mental status, where she was. I asked her if she was suicidal, and if she was, did she have a plan? Did she want to hurt anyone else? Those are kind of the initial triage questions that I would ask.
Why do you ask those questions?
Just to get a kind of a judgment on the patient, reading the patient.
What's your role at that point? Are you an investigator?
I'm not.
Are you in any way law enforcement?
I'm not.
So what's your focus when you're speaking to a patient?
It's basically hearing them speak in their story. In this specific situation, we didn't know circumstances. We just knew that Miss Reed had found her husband, which she was gone dead on the side of the road. So it was a traumatic call.
So when you were there, you knew nothing about what had happened before you got there?
We did not.
And your role had nothing to do with any of that investigation?
We did not.
You were solely focused on caring for the patient?
Correct.
Did you have any other role other than caring for the patient?
Just making sure she got to the hospital safely. She didn't hurt herself.
During those conversations, are you and firefighter Whitley doing the same thing or different things?
Again, it depends on the call. I was the lead tech, so I'm the one documented, giving a report to the nurses, the staff. So I was more kind of getting that information, my initial triage questions, and then just kind of sat and supported Miss Reed. And
were you writing down information, technical information about status and health on a report?
I was, yes.
While you were doing that, was your colleague speaking to Ms. Reed?
He was.
Did you have a chance at times to hear what they were speaking about?
Yeah, and no.
At other times, did you speak directly to Ms. Reed?
I have.
Can you describe her demeanor or temperament?
Initially, she was agitated because she didn't feel like she needed to go to the hospital. She said the statement she made, she didn't mean. She just kind of said it in jest because of the events that she went through. So she was, but then there'd be periods of which she'd be calm, and then it would fluctuate. She would have like pressured speech, repetitive, but all in all, she was cooperative.
At some point, did you have a chance to speak to her directly about her mood?
About her mood?
About her mood.
I don't know if I understand the question.
Okay. Did she say anything to you about her last interaction with what she referred to as her husband?
Objection.
Sustained.
Did she make any statements to you when you were giving her treatment or speaking to her about her husband?
Objection.
I'll allow that. It came in.
One of the reasons why she was saying suicidal stuff is because the last conversation she had with her husband at the time was an argument. I didn't feel like it was my role to really find out the details on what was said, but that's what she said to me.
But the last thing she said to him was an argument?
Objection.
Sustained.
Did she tell you what the argument was about?
She did not.
Inevitably, did you get a chance to bring her to the hospital?
We did.
Did you stay in the back of the ambulance with her?
I did.
Did you continue to have conversations with her?
Yes, I did.
Did you hear conversations or parts of conversations she was having with your colleague?
I had parts.
When you got to the hospital, what happens next?
So we brought Miss Reed into the hospital, registered her, bring her to the psychiatric section. Is it?
Okay. Thank you. I have no further questions.
Okay. Mr. Jackson?
Thank you, Your Honor. I have just a moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
Good afternoon, Firefighter Becker.
Good afternoon.
When you first arrived at the scene, there was at least two Canton police officers there, still.
Correct.
Do you remember their names?
Officer Saraf and Officer Mulvaney.
Okay. Their cruiser was there. You said that an engine was still there?
Correct.
And was there another ambulance there, or the other ambulance had already left the scene? They'd cleared?
They had already transported to the hospital.
Remind me, you were in ambulance two? Or,
I was ambulance 2.
got it. You parked behind the SUV where you ultimately made contact with Miss Reed, correct?
I think it was more in front of the SUV because the way the SUV was parked.
Got it. Got out of the ambulance, ultimately made contact with Miss Reed through the passenger door,
Correct.
had a short conversation with her there.
I did.
You said it was maybe 5 to 8 minutes?
More like 5 minutes because of the weather conditions.
Okay, nothing of great consequence. I'm guessing just an initial, I think you called it sort of a triage assessment?
Well, it was more of just introducing myself and asking her how she was doing.
Got it. And then there was one other person in the cab of the vehicle as well.
There was.
Female, male.
Female.
So there are two females, one Miss Reed, one another female. Did you see any other civilian females out there?
I didn't see.
Okay,
But
so at least where you were, the contact that you had with Miss Reed and this other female, there was just two of them, not a third one.
from what I saw, correct.
Did you get the other female's name?
Not at the time, I did not.
Okay. By the way, have you since gotten her name?
Based on a conversation Firefighter Whitley, and Miss Reed had back of the ambulance.
Got it. Okay. And who is that other person?
Miss Carrie Roberts.
Okay. When you first observed Miss Reed, did you note whether or not there was anything unusual about her physical appearance, meaning anything on her?
She did, yes.
Describe that for the jurors, please.
She had some blood around her mouth, her neck area.
At that point, were you concerned about, obviously you're concerned mainly about her safety and getting her safely to the hospital, correct?
That's correct.
Were you worried that that might be her blood?
Well, she had said that she had given CPR to her husband.
Okay, you jumped a question ahead. I was going to say, did she tell you that it was in fact not her blood?
She did, so that kind of, in a way, ruled it out.
Okay.
No injury for me.
And you didn't notice anything about her that looked like she was physically injured or physically in harm?
I did not.
Okay. She indicated that she had given CPR, mouth-to-mouth, attempts at mouth-to-mouth resuscitation to Mr. O'Keefe, correct?
She did.
And that would account for the blood on her face and in her hair and on her neck?
That's what she told me.
Okay. And based on your observations of her, you didn't have any reason to quarrel with that?
Correct.
Okay. You indicated that her tone was somewhat rapid and repetitive. Is that right?
It fluctuated. So at times it was, yes.
Did it appear to you at that time that she had gone through a pretty significant trauma, as best you were trained at the time?
Objection.
A little bit more of a foundation, I'll give it to you.
Sure. Have you ever, in your course of training, seen individuals who have gone through some sort of a traumatic event?
Frequently.
Frequently.
Everyone's different, though.
Understood. Obviously, everybody's got their own personalities and the way of dealing with those things, right?
Sure.
Have you been able to, through your training, assess whether, at least in your belief, your observations, if someone has gone through a relatively traumatic event, as opposed to just someone whistling down the sidewalk?
Yeah.
Okay. Did it appear at that time when you're interacting with Ms. Reed that she was showing the signs consistent of having gone through a trauma?
At the time, yes.
Okay. So hence the rapid speech, the repetitive speech, things of that nature?
Correct. For her. For the defendant. Some people don't have repetitive
Understood.
speech.
I'm just talking about your observations of her at that time.
Yes, sir.
Her demeanor was consistent with having gone through a significant trauma.
For the situation, sure, yes.
Oh, okay. You said that she went from calmness to agitation. The agitation you accounted for being, I don't necessarily want to go to the hospital. I don't want to be sectioned, correct?
She felt like she didn't need to. It wasn't, she wasn't going to act on her comments about wanting to harm herself.
You called it, I think in a report, it's SI, suicidal ideation?
Correct.
That's obviously of great concern to you and your partners when you're assessing a patient, correct?
That's right.
You don't want to leave someone on their own if they're going to self-harm, correct?
That's correct.
You pretty quickly assessed, I'm guessing, Firefighter Becker, that she was not, in fact, in the position to self-harm, that I think you said that the statements that she originally made, if John dies, I don't want to live, were not necessarily at the level of actual suicidal ideation. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, at the time I believed her because of the information we got and what she went through.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand your answer.
Sorry, can you repeat your question?
Of course. It's probably my fault. At the time that you assessed her, even though she had made some comments about if John doesn't live, I don't want to live either, you did not elevate that to the level of her being suicidal at that moment.
So I couldn't rule it out, but
Okay.
I didn't think it was a huge threat at the time.
Understood.
But
That's what I was trying to
we
get
couldn't rule it out, so that's why we had to take her to the hospital.
Understood. I mean, you had a Section 12. You had to take her irrespective of what you ruled in or out, right?
Right.
Okay. Firefighter Whitley was with you in the back of the ambulance the entire time you were with Miss Reed, correct?
Not the entire time. He was before we started transporting. He was kind of in and out, trying to find more of, talking to the police officers, find more of a story of, what happened,
Okay.
why we're taking the defendant on a Section 12.
Once you and Miss Reed were in the back of the ambulance, Firefighter Whitley then joined you in the back of the ambulance?
He did.
How much time lapsed?
It was a couple minutes at the most.
Okay, so it wasn't a lengthy amount of time.
It wasn't lengthy.
And he was with you during the transport, along with Miss Reed, for the whole transport back to Good Sam.
It's a good, yes,
And you said on direct examination, I think your phrase was, all in all, she was cooperative with us.
for the majority of the transport, yes.
Okay. Never became combative, never got physical, nothing like that.
No,
Okay. She did refer to Mr. O'Keefe as her husband or her spouse.
that's correct.
You're aware of HIPAA rules, obviously. You're in the medical field, correct?
Correct.
You were aware at the time that HIPAA rules would demand or dictate that unless you're a spouse or a parent or a child, there are certain rules against getting or providing information to someone who isn't one of those close family members, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. You previously indicated on direct examination that, I think your words were, that Ms. Reed indicated that her last conversation she had with her husband was an argument, correct?
Correct.
You've previously testified about that statement in other particulars, right? Other hearings.
I have.
You're paraphrasing. You didn't write down what she said about her previous interactions with Mr. O'Keefe, and you didn't record those on a tape recorder, correct?
I wrote down in my report that she said she had an argument.
Right. You didn't write them down at the time. That was a bad question on my part. You weren't taking notes as she was speaking.
Yeah, it could have been. I mean, it's kind of for every call, we jot down notes on a notepad, just
Okay.
so, when we give the staff a report, we can read off it.
Do you have those notes?
I don't.
Okay. Do you think you took notes or no?
To be honest, I'm not sure. I could have been typing them on the computer. That's what we typed the report on
Okay.
at the time.
Do you have an independent recollection of taking notes, either handwritten or on a computer, as you sit here right now?
I couldn't tell you if I did one or the other. Sometimes
Okay.
I write on the computer, sometimes I don't.
Or you might not have written anything down, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So, in any event, you weren't taking down, even if you were taking notes, you weren't taking down verbatim quotes of what she was saying. You were paraphrasing the information that was coming to you, correct?
That's correct.
All right. You had previously said or testified that the last time, let me rephrase that just a little bit. You previously indicated in recounting what it was that Miss Reed actually said to you was something along the lines of she was upset because her last words to him were because of her last words to him being in anger.
I object.
I'm going to allow the question.
Is that correct?
Well, I probably phrased it a little wrongly. The last words. It was the last conversation.
Okay, that wasn't my question. My question is a simple one. In a previous hearing, did you use the phrase "her last words to him"?
Yes,
Were
I did.
in anger.
I did.
And that was at a hearing where you were under oath, just like you are now, correct?
Correct.
That was a little closer in time than we are now. It was maybe a year ago, correct?
Correct.
Actually, my mistake. It was about 2.5 years ago. It was a grand jury, correct?
Grand jury, yes.
Okay. And the phrase that you used was, and I want to concentrate on that for just a quick second, Firefighter Becker.
Sure.
The phrase that you used at that time was that she said, quote, like her last words to him. She was upset about her, quote, last words to him. Is that right?
I object.
All right, can I see counsel at sidebar, please?
May I continue, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you. When you were recounting the conversation that Ms. Reed indicated that she was upset about, you also indicated, in addition to using the phrase, her last words to him, you also said that it was earlier in the night, correct? They had an argument earlier in the night.
I don't recall.
May I have just a moment, Your Honor?
Yes.
May I approach?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you don't mind, take a look at the top paragraph, very, very small print. Let me know when you've refreshed your recollection.
Yes.
Great. May I approach?
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
You got it.
When you wrote your report, you had indicated that when she was describing the argument that you testified to on direct, it was about an argument that was, quote, earlier in the night.
Earlier in the night, correct.
Okay. And then you recounted that statement, that same statement in the grand jury later on as at least including, quote, her last words. Is that right?
Her last words.
You were talking about an argument that they had, and then she was upset, and you were paraphrasing her, and one of the things that you paraphrased was, in fact, your statement was she was upset that was like her last words to him, correct?
She said that.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. Were you also made aware, did she tell you that her last words to him were in voicemails? Did she say that?
She didn't give any details.
Did you ask her, what were your last words to him?
I did not.
Did she ever say whether or not she believed he ever received her last words to him?
There's
i.e. in
no other
voicemail?
details than
Say that
there was no
again?
other details other than what she said.
Okay. But she did, when she was having this conversation with you about her last words to him, she did actually take out her phone and show you a bunch of missed calls to him at the same time, didn't she?
She tried to, yes.
Okay. In your mind, did you put two and two together that what she was actually talking about were the missed calls and her being upset about her last words to him, being very angry on those missed calls, those voicemails? Did you put those two things together?
I didn't.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, Mr. Brennan?
So when Ms. Reed told you that she was sad because her last conversation, or her last thing that she had said to him was an argument, did she ever suggest that was in a voicemail?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
Did she ever suggest it was in a voicemail?
She did not.
Did she ever suggest that she didn't actually speak to him, but instead it was some type of message?
Objection.
I'll allow that.
Did she ever suggest that?
She did not.
In fact, you wrote a report saying that there was an argument earlier in the night, didn't you?
Objection. Your Honor.
Sustained.
You then were interviewed, weren't you? Were you
Yes.
interviewed on February 14th, 2022?
Yes.
And you referred to the fact that she told you there was an argument earlier in the night?
Argument early in the night.
Okay. And she was telling you this when you were speaking to her that morning?
Correct. Around 6 a.m. Yes.
And earlier in the night, do you know if she was referring to 12:30
I did not know.
or 12:15
No.
or midnight?
I didn't know the time.
So his answer is he doesn't know.
You testified in the grand jury, and Attorney Jackson just asked you some questions about part of the statement you made to the grand jury when he said, like her last words. Would you like to put that in context of the whole statement you made? Do you remember
Her last words.
Do you remember the entire statement that you made in the grand jury about the statement that was made to you?
I'd have to.
May I approach?
Yes.
This is page 81, lines 1 through 4. Please read it to yourself.
Right here, sir.
1 through 4, please.
Yes.
Now, when you made that statement you were asked about in the grand jury, you didn't just say, like her last words, did you?
No.
No. You explained your memory to the grand jury?
Objection.
Ask him what he told the grand jury.
Okay. The grand jury, do you know it was on April 21st, 2022?
Yes.
Okay. And did you tell the grand jury So she
I'm going to see counsel at sidebar for a second, please.
I'm showing you that statement that you made. That includes last words, but there's more to the statement, isn't there?
She was upset.
I'd like you to read
Oh,
your
sorry.
entire
Sure.
statement, 1 through 5. You can read it out loud.
So she was also she was upset also because she said they had, you know, the last time they had talked, she had gotten into an argument. So she was upset that that was like her last words to him.
And so when you were speaking about her last word to him, were you referring to the argument?
Correct.
You testified again regarding this issue, didn't you, in May 3rd, 2024?
Correct.
And at that point, did you think or believe that the conversation she was relating to you was about a voicemail?
Objection.
I'm going to sustain the objection.
Did you use the word again on May 3rd, 2024, argument?
Objection.
I'm going to allow this.
I used argument.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Can I ask you to read your prior statement on page 10, lines 9 through 13?
Objection.
I'm going to see you at sidebar again and bring these documents, please. Bring all of it.
May I?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Sir, when you wrote the report of your notes to put in your report, do you remember the word argument?
I did.
Do you remember her actually saying the word argument?
I did.
Do you remember her ever saying any word about voice messages?
I did not.
You said that there was somebody in the front seat of the car with the defendant,
It was.
and you later learned from the defendant it was a person by the name of Kerry Roberts.
Correct.
Can you share with us the context? How did you learn that?
The defendant and my partner, firefighter Whitley, had a conversation.
Objection.
I'm going to allow it.
So the defendant brought up how if her husband had died at the time, she didn't know how she was going to take care of his kids.
Objection.
I'm going to allow this.
And firefighter Whitley mentioned that she had like a strong support system. You know, all the friends are on Canton, and
Objection, Your Honor. And reproach.
Yes.
When you spoke to the defendant and she shared with you that her last words with her husband were an argument, why didn't you ask for more detail about that?
I didn't feel it was at the time we went about the call as that we didn't think we would be witnesses in a murder trial. We were there to support Karen and ultimately get to the hospital safely.
And you were asked about trauma, and you said that you observed that the person may be in trauma, Ms. Reed.
A traumatic event,
Traumatic event.
Right.
Do you have any idea what caused that traumatic event?
I did not.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Anything?
Very briefly, you indicated that you were asked on redirect direct examination by Mr. Brennan, whether earlier in the night could have been 12 or 12:15 a.m., correct?
That's what he asked, yes.
And earlier in the night could have been 6 o'clock p.m.
Early in the night, yeah, correct.
Could have been 5 o'clock p.m.
Could have been,
Could have been 7 o'clock p.m.
sure.
Okay. You were also asked whether or not Ms. Reed actually specifically mentioned voicemails when she talked about those last words. And you said she didn't,
That I remember, correct.
but she did show you her phone.
She tried to.
And she did show you a bunch of missed calls to John O'Keefe, correct?
I wasn't going to look through her phone. I don't know who she called.
Thank you.
When she said about the argument, she said those were the last words, the argument, right?
That's correct.
Sustained. All right. Jurors disregard that last statement. All right, you are all set.
Thank you.